I figured as much since I've done a bad Resident Evil game that I should cover one of the better ones, particularly the one that brought the series legitimately back to its roots, something that I don't believe Revelations 1 and 2 did, even though those games claim as such and because Operation Raccoon City is the furthest game from what made Resident Evil the series that it was. I could have been a bit spicy and chose Resident Evil 6 since I honestly enjoy that game, but it's not a good representation of the series, lacking survival horror elements and replacing horror action with general action. But before I go down that rabbit hole, I'll stay on topic. The birth of Resident Evil 7 lies within Resident Evil 6, while commercially successful, being Capcom's second highest selling title at the time, right behind Resident Evil 5, which was the highest selling game until Monster Hunter World usurped 5. 6 was not a critical success, with many critics citing the same issues I gave in the opener. This lack of critical success caused a sequel being produced by Masachika Kawada, who was a producer for the series since Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, to be cancelled. The cancellation of that game happened in 2013, and the following year, Capcom CEO Kenzo Tsushimoto personally messaged Jun Takeuchi, the chief producer of Resident Evil 5 and someone who worked on the first 2 games in the series, and picked him to be the executive producer of the next numbered sequel in the Resident Evil series. Wanting the next RE game already in development while Revelations 2 was being readied for release, the game that would become Resident Evil 7 was greenlit, and Takeuchi went straight away to gather a team for the project. For the first 2 months of the project, Takeuchi gathered 10 people for the development team and asked them what Resident Evil meant to them. This was to gauge what would be the most important aspects of the game's design, with the team deciding atmospheric horror and item management being the 2 most important ideas pertaining to Resident Evil. Online multiplayer was dropped as well as an open world setting, as both would clash against the 2 facets the team decided upon. Takeuchi himself even stated that he wanted the game to take place in an abandoned residence, a la Resident Evil 1 and The Evil Dead, a movie that would help create the foundations of the game's visual and set design. Notable members of Takeuchi's core team were producer Tsuyoshi Kanda, who would work as a producer on Remake 2, and director Koshi Nakanishi, the director of Revelations 1 and Mercenaries 3D. Early production began in March of 2014 with the goal of creating a playable demo. 3 departments were created to complete this goal: prototype development, engine development, and art design. To help create a solid vision for the demo, Nakanishi took his team to derelict and supposedly haunted houses around Osaka. The end goal of this field trip was to bring insight to what the player should feel when traversing the game's locations. It also influenced the game's found footage aesthetic and the sewer gator subplot that would appear in the demo and finished version of the game. Takeuchi went to even greater extents than Nakanishi, as he had Toshihiko Suda create a short film shot in the first person about a character being chased by a ghost in a destitute house.
Hell, I'd still hit it.
Many of the members on the early team watched the film to get a better understanding of Takeuchi and Nakanishi's vision for the game, and the house used in the film would be used as the premise for the guest house that would appear in the game. This short film served as an early proof of concept, and one that was liked by the development team. Moving to the art department, they had a much greater freedom in coming up with the visuals of the game, as instead of creating characters to fit a location or story, the plot would be created based on the designs the art team came up with. With this in mind, 3 people on the art team rose to lead it: Hiroyuki Chi, who came up with the ideas, Tomonori Takano, who would draw the ideas, and Toshihiko Suda, who would explain the purpose of the ideas. While the freedom was great, it also meant that designs could change drastically depending on what the 3 heads came up with. This would also eat into the budget for the art design, but Makoto Fukui, a member of the art team who had also worked on Resident Evil 5 and 6 as a character modeler and artist, and side note, who had also worked on Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, and Clock Tower 3.
Actually, I've been busy making this.
Albert, what's this?
Winter's coming, and I don't want you catching cold, wandering around outside. I've been making this in my spare time. How is it, warm enough?
It's lovely. So warm and soft. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's enough playing happy families. You make me sick.
suggested using photogrammetry to cut down on costs. Photogrammetry, which is a system that has existed since the birth of photography and has been used by topographers to create maps, in game design allows the developer to convert digital photographs of real-world people and items into 3D objects for the game. This cut down design time for Resident Evil 7 to half, taking 20 days instead of 40. Most of the enemies designed for the game were mostly human, which just meant that the photos taken for them would require the actors to wear prosthetics. The only downside to using photogrammetry was that a studio, which would house 150 digital cameras, would need to be created. While the art team had an easy time for their section of the demo, the prototype and engine teams were struggling. That's because MT Framework, the proprietary engine that Capcom created for the 7th generation of games and was used for Dead Rising, Lost Planet, Devil May Cry 4 in its Special Edition, Resident Evil 5, 6, Revelations 1 and 2, and the remasters of 1 and 0, would not load properly on the PlayStation 4. Which, in hindsight, is kind of funny as Monster Hunter World and some of the games I just mentioned are both on the PlayStation 4 and use an MT Frameworks engine. The team switched to Unity, which they used for a year until a new engine was designed. Takuchi proposed that the engine created for RE7 should also be used in other games in the series down the line, as well as other Capcom games, and the development for this engine was led by Tomofumi Yoshida and Takafumi Taihara. What they came up with in a year was the Reach for the Moon engine, better known as the RE engine, which is perhaps my favorite gaming engine that has ever existed. Unlike MT Framework, RE has access to advanced graphical and rendering techniques like subsurface scatters, which is the reason why human skin looks like human skin in the engine, as well as higher resolution outputs like 4K and HDR. Games made with the engine don't just look pretty either, as they run smooth as butter and play extremely well, meaning games using the engine aren't like The Last of Us or The Order 1886, which look impressive but play like being in the sidecar of a motorcycle. At the end of 2014, the RE engine had reached a stable enough level so that conversion could begin, but there was an issue that became apparent during conversion, that being the photorealism. It ate too much denotated wham. With one attempted resignation later, the art director removed unnecessary objects in the world to lower the RAM usage. That being the last issue, the first stage of the game was finished in April 2015. During the first stage of development, Kazuhiro Takahara, a programmer for the development team, wanted RE7 to be in VR, as he personally owned an Oculus Rift. While Capcom did agree to make the game VR friendly, they had never considered VR gaming and didn't have their own model of headset. Thus, they purchased a headset under the Project Morpheus brand, which later became known as PlayStation VR. With E3 coming in a few months, Capcom wanted a test demo to be created for the Morpheus VR headset they had, with the final result being Kitchen. The demo was praised, unbeknownst to anyone, that this was the first look at what would be Resident Evil 7. This was also in spite of people comparing Kitchen to PT. PT, aka Playable Teaser, was the demo for the upcoming Silent Hills, which was developed by Kojima Productions under the pseudonym 7780 Studio. Also working on the project was Guillermo del Toro, who was directing alongside Kojima, and Norman Reedus, a man who would later have a funky fetus. Junji Ito, famed mangaka known for Uzumaki, Tomy, and Gyo, was approached by Kojima and Del Toro to work on the project, but he never worked on Silent Hills, and that's because Kojima and Konami had a falling out. Konami had started burying Kojima like Triple H buried Booker T, not mentioning him in press releases that talked about the company's restructuring. They also removed his branding and Kojima Productions' name from the official Metal Gear website, box covers for Phantom Pain, Ground Zeroes, and the MGS collection, and changed Kojima Productions Los Angeles to Konami Los Angeles. Access to internet, emails, and phone calls was also restricted for senior members of Kojima Productions. Essentially, Kojima and his team went from members of Konami to independent contractors, all because Konami officials believed that the company couldn't keep up with the changing landscape of games development and switched to a mobile-first approach. While still developing and publishing games, Konami wanted to tap into that sweet, sweet mobile market like they did with Pachinko. While Phantom Pain would come out, as butchered as it was, Silent Hills was cancelled. PT didn't have any effect on Resident Evil 7 due to this. The pre-alpha stage of 7, which was originally supposed to be finished on November 25th of 2015, was delayed to December, where it was completed. Another delay happened during the completion of the beta stage, which was supposed to be finished in spring of 2016, but was pushed back 2 months due to bug fixes. The intended release date for the game was October, something that the developers still wanted to reach even with delays. In the meantime, Beginning Hour made its release at E3 2016 alongside a trailer, confirming the game was in production. Looking at feedback from the demo, the game's release date was pushed back to make adjustments. Finally, Resident Evil 7 was released worldwide outside of Japan on January 24th, 2017 for PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbone, while Japan got it on the 26th. Following the game's release, several DLC add-ons were released, including Banned Footage Volume 1 and 2, Not a Hero, which was outsourced to Hexadrive, and End of Zoe, which was developed in-house. The version of the game I looked at was the PC release on Steam. There are some subplots within Resident Evil 7, such as what happens to the cast members of the Sewer Gators, and for the purposes of this video, I won't be diving into that. I will focus on the main story involving the infection of the Bakers and Ethan, Mia, Zoe, Chris, and Joe's encounters with them in the mold. In saying this, I will also mention that I will cover the main portion of the story in the way I usually do, in excruciating detail, but for Zoe, Chris, and Joe's parts of the story, they'll be much more flippant as their sections are quick. With that said, the story opens up with a video message from Mia Winters to her husband, Ethan Winters. She says that she loves him and that her job, which is never specified in the video outside of a throwaway line about babysitting, is almost done and that she will be returning home soon.
Oh, I cannot wait to be done with this babysitting job and come home to my loving husband. I miss you. Oh, I gotta get back to work. I love you, Ethan. I miss you so much. I'm sending tons of kisses. Bye, baby.
The camera then pans out to show Mia, in current time, recording another video message, this one about how she was lying to Ethan about something, probably related to her work, and that if he gets this video, not to come looking for her.
Ethan, you were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
3 years pass after the recording of this video message. It is around this time Ethan receives a letter regarding Mia stating that she's being held in Dolby, Louisiana at the Baker estate. While driving down to the location, Ethan calls what I'm going to assume is his workplace, as it is never specified, and tells his boss, again I'm assuming here, that Mia is alive and that she is in Louisiana. His boss is skeptical, but Ethan must know if his wife is alive or not. Ethan takes his car to the closest part of the property that he can park it on and makes his approach to the house on foot. With the front gate locked and the intercom disconnected, Ethan takes a side footpath that leads to the guest house of the Baker farm. He does find a parked van near the entrance of the farm which belongs to a group called the Sewer Gators, if the script Ethan found in the van is to be believed, and along his way to the guest house, Ethan sees what is presumably the head of the Baker family, though before Ethan can say anything to him, the patriarch disappears. Within the guest house proper, Ethan explores the decrepit housing and notices the multiple photographs in old newspapers regarding a series of kidnappings happening in Dolby. He also spots a fuse missing from a circuit box that powers up the attic stairs and a videotape. Luckily, a VCR and TV are in the same room as the tape, and Ethan puts it in to watch the contents. The tape is in the perspective of Clancy Jarvis, which is a misspelling as his surname is actually Jarvis, like Tommy, and it shows all 3 Sewer Gators, Pete, who is the short weekend sub and face of the group, and Andre, the taller, unafraid producer for the group, exploring the guest house just like Ethan. They mention that the Bakers were quiet and reserved people, and that whatever's happening on their property isn't like them.
They were quiet, not backward. A lot of bad rumors about their son, Lucas. Bad seed, apparently.
Andre wanders off while Pete and Clancy aren't looking, and while they call out to Andre, he never returns. Pete and Clancy try to find where he is, with Pete seeing a secret lever in the fireplace and pulling it, opening up a hidey hole that leads into the basement. Pete makes Clancy go down the ladder first, where he finds Andre dead, attempting to suck off a metal pole. The tape ends when what appears to be the head of the Baker family attacks Clancy and Pete. Freaked out by the contents of the tape, Ethan uses the hidden lever to open up the basement so he can find both his wife and the missing fuse. Unexpectedly, Ethan finds Andre, well, the corpse of the man, and his wife Mia locked in a room. Breaking the chain locking Mia's cell, Ethan wakes up Mia, which freaks her out as she said to him in the second video to not come looking for her. This throws Ethan off as the message he got, the letter, told him to pick her up at the Baker estate. Mia starts to question herself if she really did send the letter to Ethan, but she quickly changes the subject, asking if Ethan was seen by him. Still confused, Ethan asks for an explanation for what is going on, but Mia cuts him off by saying Daddy is coming and that they need to escape now.
Daddy, I hope you're thirsty.
Insert dumb sex jokes.
Hey,
here. Mia leads Ethan to a safer part of the guest house while Ethan and her share some small talk, which is basically Ethan asking more questions about what is going on. It's clear from the questions that Ethan asks that Mia is practically in the same boat that he is, as Mia doesn't know that 3 years have passed nor why Ethan came to the house, though she at least confirms that she didn't send the letter. At least, willingly didn't send it.
Mia, we have to talk. That message you sent me.
Not me. That wasn't me.
But you did.
I didn't.
Okay, fine. Just tell me what's going on.
I'm telling you everything that I know.
When Mia and Ethan get to the supposed safe location in the house, Mia freaks out as an entrance that was there before is now gone, leading to Mia accepting the fact that Ethan is going to become part of the family. Ethan tunes her out and looks around the location, noticing a photograph of an old woman and text labeling the image as E001. He also spots effigies of Mia and a little girl. It's when he is done looking at those two objects does a random force rip Mia away from Ethan further into the guest house. Ethan chases after his wife but doesn't find her, only running into more locked doors and health drinks. Suddenly, a loud banging is heard and it is clearly coming from the basement, the place that Ethan was just in. Having the biggest cojones, Ethan opens up the basement door and starts to walk down the steps. Crawling out of the darkness is Mia, but it's not her exactly as her face has become twisted and veiny as if something is exerting control on her. She throws Ethan back up the stairs, meaning whatever influence is forcing her to do this has also increased her physical strength, and starts to attack him with a kitchen knife. Ethan manages to resist Mia, but his left hand becomes slashed to pieces. Suddenly, Mia stops her attack as if no longer possessed and tells Ethan that someone, specifically a she, is worming their way into Mia's mind. Pulling a page from an angry child losing an argument, Mia starts slamming her head into the wall beside her, but quite contradictory, she starts saying that she deserves this. With one final slam against the wall, one with added blood splatter, Mia knocks herself out, worrying Ethan immensely. However, Mia immediately revives, but back under possession, and throws Ethan through a wall into a room. Having no other options, and with Mia arming herself with a large splinter, Ethan picks up an axe and begins to fight his wife, landing a solid blow into her neck clavicle region. This causes Mia to crumple, possibly keel over. Before he can even comprehend what he has just done, a phone begins to ring and Ethan answers it. A female voice on the other line tells him point blank that he shouldn't have come to the estate. Ethan asks the same questions he asked Mia to this new voice, who introduces herself as Zoe, but she doesn't answer them and only tells Ethan that the best way out of the guest house is through the attic. As if on cue, Ethan hears a previously locked door become unlocked and starts to head back into the main part of the guest house, but when he passes by the last location of Mia's body, it is no longer there. Only the axe has been left. Taking the axe with him, Ethan uses the bolt cutters he found in the basement to unlock a wardrobe to acquire the missing fuse, but when he heads back to the living room of the guest house, he briefly sees Mia. Nothing happens from this sighting, though after putting in the fuse, Mia jumps Ethan as he's going to the attic. She reassures Ethan that everything is okay before stabbing and pinning his hand to the wall with a screwdriver.
You shouldn't have done that! It fucking hurts!
As if he wasn't screwed enough, Ethan can't get a good grip on the driver and Mia is bumped up from Toolbox Murders to Louisiana Chainsaw Massacre.
Now, let's see what you feel.
At the last possible moment, Ethan pulls out the tool and blocks the saw with his left hand, which, while disarming Ethan, it's better than taking it with his body. Laughing at his misfortune and tossing him like a wet paper towel, Mia bumbles off, muttering to herself about containing an outbreak and burning everything. Somehow not falling into shock, Ethan picks up his left hand, as it's better to reattach a limb than to use someone else's as a replacement, and just like Mia, bumbles up to the attic. Finding a gun up there, Ethan uses it to fight Mia as she's preventing him from leaving. Defeating her again, Mia collapses to the ground, the last word she says being "I love you" to Ethan. Just as he thinks he is free, Ethan gets cold-clocked by the patriarch of the Baker family, but the man is at least considerate to welcome Ethan before knocking him out and dragging both him and Mia to the main house. Passing in and out of consciousness, Ethan hears Zoe staple his left arm back on while mentioning that Ethan has work to do, a phrase that has a double meaning as we will soon find out. Good thing I made a reference to Chainsaw Massacre, cause when Ethan wakes up, he's in his own rendition of the dinner sequence. Greeting him at the table is Jack Baker, the patriarch, Marguerite, the matriarch, Lucas, overall scumbag and son, and the old woman from the E001 photo. Marguerite tries to get Ethan to eat the disgusting slop that the family is eating, but Ethan refuses, which causes Lucas to throw his plate at Ethan. This angers Jack, who cuts off Lucas's left arm. He then proceeds to force feed Ethan, but Ethan can't even stomach whatever the supposed food is. It looks like a turd painted white and probably tastes the same. Becoming hysterical over the rejection of her food, Marguerite and Jack get into a scuffle with Marguerite leaving the dining room. Seeing as Ethan won't eat the food, Jack tries to feed him a knife, something that, just like the white chocolate, isn't part of a balanced diet, while Lucas watches on with glee. Impeccable timing saves Ethan from a serrated sandwich, as before Jack can fully force the knife down Ethan's gullet, the Baker home phone starts ringing, Lucas chiming that it's probably the cop who called last time. The two Bakermen leave Ethan to deal with the police, Jack promising to come back and kill Ethan after he's done butchering, in his own words, a hog. Left to his own devices, Ethan comically wobbles his chair, making it fall to the floor in spectacular fashion and allowing Ethan to untie himself. E001 doesn't do anything as she's a frail old woman, allegedly, and doesn't try to stop Ethan from leaving the dining room. Ethan doesn't get too far before he encounters Jack again, making good on that promise earlier, but Ethan slips by him, taking a hatch key and using it to enter the laundry room. This somehow forces Jack to stop looking for Ethan in this part of the house, as when Ethan leaves the laundry room, he no longer hears Jack calling out. Though as he leaves the room, the phone in the laundry room starts ringing and Ethan picks it up. Just like the last phone call, on the other end is Zoe, who congratulates Ethan's survival for the time being. Wanting to ask more questions, Zoe cuts off Ethan before he even gets a chance to, telling him that an exit is located in the main hall of the house he's currently in, and that the cool smartwatch on his wrist is a codex, something that will become important later. Zoe does fail to mention that the part of the house that Ethan is currently in has been locked off from the main hall with a classic Resident Evil puzzle, a strange locking mechanism that requires an ox statue. With no ox statue in hand, Ethan starts to head back to the dining room, but a cop grabs his attention. Ethan tries to get the cop, or deputy, to help him, but makes the rookie mistake of asking not Marvin for his gun. Still, Ethan manages to appeal to NM's ego, and NM throws Ethan a bone, handing him a pocket knife and telling him to meet in the garage.
But you want to be a hero and save my life. A fucking pocket knife?
Here. Take it. That's all you're gonna get. Now go. Garage. Now.
What am I gonna do with a knife?
Following those instructions, Ethan's rescue via cop is buried in the ground when Jack teleports behind NM like it's nothing personal and digs his grave. Spotting that the deputy dropped his gun, Ethan takes it and starts to fight Jack until he sees the keys for the family car located on a bench. Deciding that running over Jack would be better than a couple of rounds from a measly handgun, Ethan gets into the car and starts it. Jack, in his infinite wisdom, challenges Ethan to run him over, and Ethan obliges, colliding into the family patriarch over and over.
Alright, bring it on!
Kinda lost in the rush of adrenaline, Ethan doesn't spot that Jack isn't anywhere to be seen until the man himself pulls off the roof of the car and starts to take Ethan for a ride. A ride that concludes with Ethan, Jack, and the car crashing into some girders.
No!
Ethan narrowly avoids being impaled while Jack isn't so lucky, though something is clearly up as Jack's face twitches just slightly as if he is alive. Sure enough, when Ethan leaves the car, which has started to light up, a burning Jack follows, who picks up Ethan and tries to strangle him, but the car explodes, knocking both to the ground. Noticing a ladder has come down, Ethan tries to leave the garage, but Jack once again gets back up to blow his head off with Ethan's gun.
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see something wonderful.
Fuck!
Frightened but still determined, Ethan finds the ox statue and uses it to gain entrance to the main hall, where Zoe calls him again. She asks him if her father gave him any trouble, with Ethan giving an incredulous response to learning that Jack is Zoe's father. Continuing to be mysterious, Zoe tells Ethan that she does have a plan but can't reveal it to him at this moment. Before hanging up, Zoe tells him that the exit out of the main house is locked, and Ethan finds out that he needs 3 dog heads to unlock the door when he examines it. Having a concrete goal in mind now, Ethan explores the rest of the house looking for the 3 dog heads. Starting with the second floor of the house, Ethan runs into E001 just chillin', not doing anything particular. Being unsuspecting of the woman, Ethan goes to the rec room of the second floor and finds another videotape, this one of Mia running from Marguerite while in the old house on the property. Outside of teaching Ethan about the layout of the old home and the shadow locks the Bakers have installed into their house, Ethan doesn't learn much of anything from Mia's tape, though he does spot a picture of Mia with a little girl at the end of it.
Where do you think you're going?
Ethan, please help me. Ethan, help me.
Perhaps this little girl was Mia's assignment, though evidence in the Baker home points to the family also having a little girl named Evelyn, as in Ethan's exploration to find the dog heads, he finds a photograph of Evelyn that was dated back to 2014, the same year that Mia went missing. Finding 2 of the 3 dog heads, Ethan goes to the upstairs bathroom and finds a wooden statue needed for a shadow lock, but when he goes to leave to complete the lock, Jack, body still badly burnt yet recovering from the gunshot wound, makes a sudden reappearance and starts babbling to a surprised Ethan that his little girl, no doubt Evelyn, has given the family a gift. Not wanting to deal with Jack this time, Ethan flees to the shadow lock to unlock it, allowing access to a secluded part of the main house. In this part of the mansion, Ethan finds a note explaining why the Bakers are kidnapping people. It's to turn them into strange monsters, and Ethan has a few encounters with these molded as he explores the basement looking for the last dog head. Finding it inside the dissection room in the basement before Ethan can grab it, Jack does unwittingly, muttering to himself over his annoyance that Evelyn has decided to make Ethan the patriarch of the family. Having no other choice, Ethan follows Jack to find the last dog head, which he does, but he immediately gets ambushed by Jack, leading to another scuffle, one that involves Jack making a reference to Evil Dead 2 as he and Ethan duel each other with chainsaws. The Battle of the Saws ends with Ethan the victor, as the amount of damage Ethan gave to Jack caused his upper body to explode into chunky salsa. Securing the last head, Ethan becomes free of the main house, for the time being, and makes it to the yard where he sees a trailer, presumably where Zoe is. Entering it, he doesn't see Zoe anywhere, though he does spot a whiteboard that has outlined what Zoe's plan is: make a serum to cure her of whatever has infected the family. Not spotting hide nor hair of Zoe, Ethan goes to leave the trailer, but a ringing phone pulls him right back in. Once again, it's Zoe on the other side, and she praises Ethan for making it this far before explaining to him that her family, herself, and Mia have been infected with something that Mia and her can't leave the property until they are cured.
I can't leave the property unless I get it out. And the same goes for Mia.
Is there a way to get it out?
We need the serum. It should clear whatever this stuff is out of the body, as long as you're not too far gone.
Alright, so where is it?
If I knew where one was, I'd already be long gone. But I have a feeling my mother has hidden some inside the old house somewhere.
So if we get this thing, I can help Mia and we can get out of here?
Right. And so can I. The old house is near the water. You can't miss it.
Alright.
I just hope you can handle my mother.
Your mother?
Be careful. They'll be looking for you.
Pointing him towards the old home, Ethan makes his way there, dealing with the overgrown bugs that have infested the place. Luckily, Ethan finds pieces too and makes the flamer, allowing him to destroy the hives that the bugs are coming from. With it, he gains entry to the cellar of the home to find another figure for a shadow lock. Before he grabs the statue, Mia shows up and Ethan demands answers from her. She explains that she only remembers bits and pieces of what is going on, like a mental lock has been placed on her. Ruining this reunion is Lucas with an intentionally incestuous comment as he abducts Mia.
Daddy, right? You mind if I borrow Mommy for a little bit?
As a chain link fence is in Ethan's way and bullets not really harming the Bakers all that well, Ethan is powerless to stop Lucas, leaving taking the stone statue the only available option left. Going from bad to worse, Marguerite has decided to stalk the hallways of the old house, though Ethan, master of stealth that he is, sneaks around her to solve the shadow lock and find the crank that was in Mia's tape. With it, he finds the crow key, allowing him to enter the second floor of the house, but Marguerite stops Ethan from entering the upstairs and throws him down a hole. Unlike her husband, however, Marguerite doesn't put up much of a fight and tumbles into the hole with Ethan after a few flamer puffs. She also turns into a strange liquid, but Ethan doesn't find out if it is harmful or not, wanting to get out of the hole as quick as possible. Since no one is impeding him now, Ethan uses the crow key and finds a strange box on an altar. Whatever the box is containing, it causes the codex to light up with the phrase "target acquired," which causes the box to open. Inside the box is a weird mummified corpse and a recipe for the curing serum, requiring 1 D-series cranial and peripheral nerve. Almost expecting these phone calls now, Ethan talks to Zoe about the serum. Zoe has the head, leaving only the arm. She tells him to search the rest of the old home, which he does, but Ethan quickly finds out that he needs a lantern to explore the back end of the top floor. Too bad the only person who has the missing lantern is Marguerite, who's evolved from goopy liquid form to gross spider form and is heading towards the greenhouse.
What the fuck? Well, that's special.
Ethan follows her and has another showdown with Marguerite, killing her for real this time and taking the lantern. Unlocking the lantern lock, Ethan explores the rest of the old home, finding creepy goings-on in this section of the house, such as multiple shoes in a drawer, clearly from kidnapped victims, items moving on their own, and drawings from Evelyn depicting her family as well as a book capsizing, confirming that Evelyn is the young girl in the Mia picture. Ethan even gets to hear Evelyn as she tells him to stay away from the farthest room on the top floor. Her room.
Stay away.
Not heeding her warning, Ethan finds the D-series arm that he needs for the serum and goes to leave the old home, but spots Evelyn for the briefest of moments as if she's playing with him. All hell breaks loose in the old home as the hallway leading into Evelyn's bedroom becomes filled with molded, forcing Ethan to strategically avoid the monsters. Before Ethan can leave the old house, he gets one last phone call from Zoe confirming that they have the ingredients. She tells him to meet her in the trailer, but when Ethan does just that, he doesn't find Zoe. The phone in the trailer rings and Ethan starts to throw a strop at Zoe, but the one calling this time is Lucas, who tells Ethan that Zoe has been put into timeout alongside Mia. If Ethan wants to free Mia and Zoe, he must complete Lucas's activity, with the first step being looking in the fridge the trailer has.
Now, if you want the head, feel free to come by any time and I'll give it to you. But only if you participate in a little activity I've put together just for you.
What activity?
Oh, I know you're excited, but don't worry. It's not going anywhere. First step I need you to take, partner, is for you to take a peek inside the fridge in the trailer there.
Fuck you!
Oh, come on now, don't be like that. You want to have some fun, don't you? Now, look in the fridge.
Located inside the fridge is the head of Deputy David Anderson, the not Marvin from before, and on it is a note telling Ethan to head back to the dissection room. On his way back to that room, Ethan runs into E001 again, though Ethan runs past her into the room of David's body. Lucas, the crazy man that he is, has stuffed the snake key down into David, and Ethan, having no choice, shoves his arm down David's neck stump to get it.
Sorry, buddy.
Over the intercom, Lucas explains that the key will allow Ethan to get 2 key cards, which will open up the barn. Quick as a mosquito, Ethan searches the rest of the main house. First, Lucas's room, where he finds out that, yeah, even before infection, Lucas was a colossal asshole and a sociopath, as well as one of the key cards in a videotape labeled Happy Birthday. Holding off on looking for the other key card, Ethan watches the tape where Lucas has tasked Clancy with solving a basic puzzle, lighting a birthday cake. But because this is Lucas, he has made the game unwinnable, or at least so it seems, for Clancy, and he dies in an inferno of agony.
Happy birthday!
Resuming the search, Ethan finds the second key card, and just as he is about to use them, Lucas reminds Ethan via phone about the party. Ethan then uses the cards and enters the barn. Greeting Ethan is a large TV set where Lucas toys with Ethan a bit over the D-series nerves and tries to go on a rant about how cool the powers that Evelyn gave to the family are, but an off-screen Evelyn tells Lucas to pipe down a bit.
Ooh, she thinks this thing is special. No, Ethan. That ain't special. This right here is special. You see, Ethan? Not everybody wants to turn back the clock. What? What, Evelyn?
This sorta enrages Lucas, and though he does continue his rant, he does let slip that Evelyn was found by Jack.
There's a stupid bitch. She doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all. Now everybody wants to turn back the clock. So Ethan, Ethan, you can crawl around underneath that filthy, rotten house all you want looking for them ingredients, but you ain't gonna find a goddamn thing, Ethan.
With his rant over, Lucas challenges Ethan before switching off the TV, causing it to explode. Following the one hallway the barn has, Ethan carefully avoids the tripwire bombs and rigged crates that Lucas has set up. What he doesn't get past, though, is a password-protected door, even with Lucas's gracious help. Ethan, knowing that Lucas is the personification of a trash can filled with sweaty jockstraps, enters the false password that Lucas gives him and stands far away from the numpad, suspecting another trap. This hunch is proven true as a swinging spike trap flies down to pierce anyone unfortunate to believe Lucas. After the trap fails, a secret door opens up, leading further into the barn in a fight with a fat molded.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the bar fight. Keep it clean, gentlemen. We have rules.
Fuck you too.
Though imposing size-wise, Ethan takes down the tall molded and finds the real password for the numpad on Clancy's corpse. Good to know that even in Louisiana they serve fried chicken. As if knowing that Lucas will prevent Ethan from entering the happy birthday room with any items on himself, Ethan stores everything in one of the many item boxes before starting the puzzle. Since Ethan already knows the right word for the valve lock, Ethan immediately dials L for loser and uses the valve to turn off the sprinkler so he can light the birthday cake. Incensed by Ethan solving the puzzle, Lucas tries to kill him by timed explosive, but Ethan picks it up and safely deposits it in a small opening in the cake room, creating an entrance to Lucas's command center.
That was supposed to be for you, goddammit!
Being all bluster, Lucas runs away before Ethan can lay his hands on the twerp, but with the D-series items recovered and Zoe and Mia chained up at the boathouse, Ethan heads there so all three of them can get out. Inside the boathouse, Ethan unties Mia and Zoe and hands Zoe the ingredients to make the serum, which produces 2 antidotes. Before Mia and Zoe can remove whatever the infection is, Jack, who's mutated into a weird blob monster that would make Duvall proud, decides to be one last roadblock to the three's freedom. Ethan squares off with Jack and does manage to hurt him, but nothing is really sticking to the giant blob. Zoe, realizing how desperate the situation is, tells Ethan to use one of the cures on Jack, which surely kills him. Though this does lead to a conundrum, as with only one cure, Ethan can only save one of the two out of Mia and Zoe. Making the logical choice, Ethan saves Mia, which emotionally hurts Zoe, almost like she guided Ethan out of self-interest.
Go! Both of you just go! Come with us. I'm sure there's someone who can help.
This is my home. Apparently I belong here.
Though Ethan promises to send help, Zoe says not to bother as she'll be long dead before help arrives. Out on the bayou, Mia thanks Ethan, but he cuts through the bullshit sentimentality by hazarding a guess that Mia had something to do with the Baker incident. Mia continues to say she doesn't remember, causing Ethan to tell her to try. Before the conversation can continue, Ethan and Mia spot a large tanker, no doubt the boat from Evelyn's drawing. And before you can say tentacle attack, giant molded tendrils knock Ethan and Mia out of their dinghy.
What the fuck? What is that? What is that?
The story then switches perspective to Mia, who is awoken by Evelyn. The first thing Mia does, besides look for Ethan, is check her inventory, where she notices a strange bottle that has E001 on the label. That means E001, the old woman, was the assignment Mia was working on, but that can't be right, as E001 is old, and it's clear that Evelyn was the assignment Mia had to look over, and she's young. Unless... Anyway, Mia finds Ethan, but he's in terrible shape as his codex clearly shows that he is in the danger zone, and that codex would be right, as a tendril from before spirits Ethan away. Mia chases after the goopy mass while dealing with hallucinations of the boat's past, as well as Evelyn deciding to poke her head into Mia's head.
Are you remembering?
What? What are you?
Evelyn, while complaining to Mia like a child over Mia's incontinence of the mind, at least guides her to a TV set so Mia can recover her lost memories. What Mia relearns is that she was on transportation detail for a new BOW called E001, codenamed Evelyn, as part of an organization called the Connections. Think of them as in the same vein as Wesker's Hive Host capture force. During transportation, Evelyn, EV for short, started vomiting mold, which infected the crew of the ship as well as created Molded. It's revealed that because Mia was the caretaker for Evelyn, she started to refer to Mia as her mother. Also revealed is that even though Evie is a BOW, her mindset is that of a child's, as she complains to Mia that she doesn't want to live in a lab anymore and that she wants a house with a family. Everything on the ship falls apart as Evie clogs up the engines with mold. It's then that Mia becomes infected with the mold and records her second video message to Ethan before the boat sinks and Mia falls into the bayou. Back in the present time, the mental lock on Mia has been removed and she flat out tells Evie that they won't and never will be a family. This causes Evie to have probably the worst scene in the game where she gets right into Mia's face and laughs at her. Like, I understand it's trying to be scary, but it comes off completely as comedic. With Evie cutting all ties from Mia, she makes double time searching for Ethan, finding him in the engine room. Evie tries to stop Mia from getting to the room, but Mia easily defeats any molded thrown her way and rejoins Ethan. Switching back to Ethan's perspective, he has been infected by the mold and his mind has become connected to Evie's hive, allowing an honest conversation between himself and Jack. Also in the room is Zoe, though being in her moody punk phase, she doesn't say anything to Ethan. Jack explains that the Bakers aren't killers, which is 3/4 right, and explains where he found Evelyn and how her infection works. Evelyn was found out in the bayou after the tanker sank, and the way she infects you is by the mold. Once infected with the mold, you become a slave to her whim and experience hallucinations of Evelyn. This explains why Mia didn't know about the letter she sent. The last thing Jack says to Ethan before being released from the hive mind is to free his family. That means getting Zoe and Lucas and Jack. Hang on, that means Jack is still alive because he's in the hive mind alongside Zoe, who is also still alive. Marguerite not being in the strange etherscape means she's dead, but Lucas isn't there, and he's alive. Something tells me that other characters might have run-ins with Jack, Zoe, and Lucas. That's enough of me pointing out how good the environmental storytelling is in this scene. In the real world, Ethan wakes up to Mia and Evie talking to each other, with Evie teasing Mia over Ethan not loving her. Mia frees Ethan from the mold cocoon that he's trapped in and tells him to go deal with Evelyn, sacrificing herself in the process.
Mia, how?
There's no time. You have to get out of here and find her. Here, take this.
What? Wait, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Saving your life. You need to go. I won't be able to resist for much longer.
No.
Now go kill that little bitch.
No. Mia! No!
With the E001 sample handed over, Ethan cuts through a salt mine to get back to the house, yet he spots many strange things on his trip. First, he sees a military chopper flying in the air, as if some bioterrorism security assessment alliance has caught wind of what is happening in Dulvey. Second, on his approach to the salt mine, Ethan hears some radio chatter between, assumedly, some BSAA agents reporting that there has been signs of combat around the Baker house and that Lucas has been sending encrypted information to an undisclosed third party, and that he's currently in the mine. More on that later. And third, when going through the mines, Ethan passes through Lucas's personal lab. In it, Lucas has left his laptop completely unguarded, allowing Ethan to learn that Lucas, through whatever the connections gave him, has been separated from Evie's hive mind, meaning he no longer experiences the hallucinations. He can still physically see Evie, and he drops a bombshell. Evie has rapidly aged during the time she was rescued by the Bakers in current time, explaining that the old woman is Evie. Though one could already guess that because the reveal was given up front by the photo. While still in the lab, Ethan makes a neurotoxin for Evie that will shut her down for good. Rushing back to the house, Evie throws almost every molded type, at Ethan, and he cuts them all down. At the end of the mines, Ethan finds out that the room where he first saw the E001 photo is connected to the mines. Ethan then relives the events of the guest house, but with behind the scenes toggled on.
Ethan, it's okay. It's okay, it's me. I know you didn't mean to hurt me.
Kill him, Mommy.
But you shouldn't have done that! It fucking hurts!
He doesn't want to be my daddy? Then he can die. Now it's Mommy's turn to kill you.
Making one last trip up the attic, Ethan has his final encounter with Evelyn and injects her with the toxin, revealing that Evie was using her hallucinations to hide the fact that she has rapidly aged. Breaking down, figuratively and literally, Evelyn asks, much like a child would, why everyone hates her.
Why does everyone hate me?
Because of how unstable Evelyn has become due to the toxin, she starts fusing with all the mold within the estate and becomes a Splatterhouse boss. She starts to slap Ethan into paste, but through his codex, one of the BSAA agents tells him to use the pistol that landed near him. Picking up the Albert 01, Ethan finishes off Evelyn. With the giant mold monster dead, the BSAA agents are able to land, with the one who talks to Ethan and assuring him that the nightmare is over being Chris Redfield.
I'm Redfield. I'm glad we found you.
The fuck took you guys so long?
The man in search of an heir places Ethan on a helicopter ride out of the area alongside Mia, who also survived. And it wasn't the BSAA who landed in Dulvey, as only Chris belongs to that organization. Instead, it was the newly formed Blue Umbrella who responded to the Dulvey incident. On the chopper ride out, Ethan gives a monologue about how when one door closes, another opens, saying that his relationship with Mia has only gotten stronger. This ends the base game story, but not the overall main story, as now we jump back to the past. 3 years in the past for the daughter's storyline. This will be the shortest of the 3 add-ons, as all it really shows is the beginning infection that the Bakers go through from the eyes of Zoe and her attempts to escape the family, ultimately failing, being trapped for 3 years with the family. She does learn about Lucas's connection to the Connections and a serum to cure the infection, but that's the only relevant information from Daughters. Moving forward ahead, this time to after the defeat of Evelyn, Not a Hero starts. Chris commences Operation Lurking Fear, a rescue termination mission. At this point in time, Lucas has gone into business for himself, cutting ties to the Connections and sending information about the E-Series to that undisclosed third party I mentioned earlier. He has also taken 3 Blue Umbrella operatives hostage, while Chris is uneasy working with Brew Umbrella? Brew. That's their IPA. While Chris is uneasy I can't get over that. Brew Umbrella. They're rivals with Broken Skull IPA. Did WWE ever have a Resident Evil commercial? Because I know they had a Majora's Mask one. Makes you wonder. While Chris is uneasy working with Blue Umbrella, as the group is made up of former Umbrella Corps, he's on loan from the BSAA, and well, he's gotta stop bioterrorism. As Chris enters the mines, he runs into 2 of the operatives he needs to rescue, but one turns out to be Lucas in disguise, and he places a bomb on Chris's wrist while also killing the actual operative. This happens to all the agents that Chris tries to rescue, as Lucas wants to break the former STARS member before killing him. Instead, this just makes Chris more angry, and Lucas realizes this, activating Chris's bomb. This fails, so Lucas activates the mine's own self-destruct system, which also fails. Chris Redfield isn't a punk son of a bitch, though Lucas is and thinks Chris has died, allowing Chris to sneak up on Lucas and chase him into a corner. Lucas tries to fight back, both unmutated and mutated, but Lucas dies to the awesome might of Chris Boulder Puncher Redfield. He also stops the information flow that Lucas set up. I told you I was going to be quick with these add-ons. Lastly, after the end of the base game story, End of Zoe happens. Zoe, still under the mold's effect, crystallizes. A couple of Blue Umbrella operatives find her, but so does her Uncle Joe, a proper swamp man not in the know of technology or stuff like that. He blames the agents for Zoe being in the shape that she's in and easily bops the 2 agents. Joe at least interrogates one, learning that the Umbrella Boys were going to cure Zoe. And that becomes the crux of End of Zoe, Joe Baker looking for a cure, which he does find, but it's not the correct dosage, so he has to make more, but uh-oh, a tall sack of shit called the Swamp Man has taken Zoe, better powerbomb him and rip his head off. That turns out to not be enough, and that's because the Swamp Man is Jack, and he takes Zoe back to the main house, where he and Joe have a good old-fashioned slobber knocker, with Joe coming out on top because of a robot glove he found that reinforces his punches. End of Zoe ends with Joe reassuring Zoe that her family loved her, and she receives a call from Ethan, who reminds her that he never breaks his promises. Thus ends the main story of Resident Evil 7. I think the absolute best part about RE7's story is how far disconnected it is from the ongoings that have happened in the rest of the universe. Yes, at the end we do see Chris Redfield on loan from the BSAA to Blue Umbrella to help contain Evelyn's mold, but outside of Mia's and Lucas's connection, pun intended, to the Connections and Chris's campaign, Resident Evil 7's story feels like a standalone story, which I think helps it in the long run. The events in the story are more or less an accident, or at least feel as such instead of being a deliberate happening, such as the case in some of the other games in the series. This also makes the outcome of Evelyn's release much more tragic, as the Bakers could have been anyone. This is another facet that breathes life into this somewhat structurally basic plot. We see the toll that a BOW has on regular people in intimate detail. We have seen BOW attacks in the series before, like with Raccoon City, Tall Oaks, China, and Terra Grigia, but those just serve as a catalyst to forward the plot or to put the characters in danger. With the Baker estate, which is very much its own character much like the mansion from 1, you see the decay and disarray that has befallen it. A once luxurious home overrun with mold, bugs, and filth. The same can be said for the Baker family. Jack was a kind patriarch willing to help those in need, and his penance for being a do-gooder is being twisted into an undying enforcer for a supposed daughter. Tragedy is the best word when it comes to the whole affair. A strong aspect of the story is just how ordinary most of the cast is. In previous mainline Resident Evil games, you've either played someone connected to the military or police or someone who has training from the military or police. While characters in the series were definitely out of their league when thrust into the situations they were put in, it rings more true in this game as Ethan is just an average Joe. Headstrong and determined, yes, but regular in every way. He isn't a Chris Boulder Puncher Redfield or a Leon Motorcycle Acrobat Kennedy, which, to be clear, Chris and Leon are both good characters, but for a story such as this, they'd be out of place due to how low-key the story is. Ethan goes to Louisiana to find his supposedly missing wife who was last seen 3 years ago and gets way in over his head when he finds out that his wife and a few strangers have been infected with mold. That's the beauty of the story, how comparably small it is next to the other stories in the series, even when compared to the game that this one is homaging, Resident Evil. Ethan's only backed up by 2 other people within the story, Mia and Zoe. It makes his struggle against the Baker family and Evelyn seem impossible, which just makes it even better each and every time he one-ups or defeats one of the family members. He is a generally sympathetic character, as his ordeal with the E-Series BOW was only caused due to his desire to see his wife again. It's extremely easy to root for the guy. He does have a bit of an edge to him as he starts becoming more and more sarcastic as his encounters with the mold increase, but these moments do add a bit of comedic levity to both him and the story. And before I continue on with the other characters, the sprinkles of dark comedy are a nice touch. It never slows the pace down, and it's more matter of fact, like Ethan picking up his severed hand. Ethan isn't the only good character within the story though, as I would argue that almost all the major characters are great. Mia, Ethan's wife, isn't exactly clean cut, something that Ethan has been suspicious of even before her disappearance. I like that she is part of the blame when it comes to accidentally releasing Evie, regarding her as a bioweapon rather than a person. I know Evie's fully capable of molding your mind, whether by choice or accident, but Mia is pretty heartless to Evie when on the boat. The fact that she is the first enemy encountered helps to paint her as part of the problem. Zoe might serve as mission control, wanting to help Ethan find a way out of the situation, but it seems more out of self-interest than anything else. She can be friendly, but having to live 3 years with a murderous family would motivate anyone to escape. Again, why else would she throw a strop at Ethan for curing his wife over her? Though this does lead to a heartwarming moment when Ethan sends Blue Umbrella and Chris to rescue her, showing just how much of a saint Ethan is. Chris is still Chris, and while I don't care that his inclusion kinda takes away from the coziness of the story, his teaming with Blue Umbrella does bring an interesting dynamic to his character, as while he's all fine and dandy dealing with BOWs, he would much rather do it with the BSAA rather than a PMC comprised of people who tried to kill him. Still, he makes it a point to rescue the Lost Agents and gets quite perturbed when Lucas starts killing them off one by one, not letting his bias against Umbrella get the better of him. Again, while I don't care for what Chris brings to 7, as I prefer the small-scale story that 7 tells unconnected from the war on bioterror, it's handled well enough. Joe is probably my favorite character in the cast next to Lucas due to his backwater nature. He has a strong belief in family, willing to do anything to help his, but he's also a swamp man hillbilly who'd much rather punch his problems to death than conversate. Still, he's got moxie and shit talks mold monsters on the reg, which makes him fun to play as. His story is all about saving the only family he has left while reminding Zoe that even though their family is changed into monsters, they're still family and still loved Zoe as such. Joe's story also has a bit of brotherly rivalry like Devil May Cry, which elevates End of Zoe. I've already talked about Jack, but I didn't mention the best scene in the game as he is the star of it. I love the one-to-one that Jack has to Ethan because you see the gentleness that Jack honestly has. He's no monster, and he took Evie into the Baker house because of his kind-heartedness, something that Evie took advantage of. The scene also has great foreshadowing, as while Jack and Zoe are within the dreamlike collective that Ethan is slowly becoming a part of, Marguerite and Lucas aren't. It is easily inferred that the reason Marguerite isn't seen is because she's dead, but Lucas ran away before Ethan could give him the solid slapping around that he deserves. This is a nice little detail that outright says that Lucas isn't under the control of the mold, he's just an out-and-out dick, and what a dick he is. While I like Evie as a villain, as her story is sympathetic, being a human BOW that wants a family, and much like with the Bakers, she is tragic, being capstoned by her asking why everyone hates her, which is harrowing due to Evie's childlike nature, even as an old woman. I find Lucas to be much more entertaining. His complete sociopathy, coupled with his strange gadgetry and fascination with unwinnable games, always makes it a treat whenever he comes on screen. The game outright wants you to hate his guts, and that's seen from the description of his family photo. His odd way of talking only adds to his charm. I do think Evie does make a better vehicle for the tragic theming of the story, however, as she is the most tragic character out of all of them. Evie, while a powerful BOW, is still a child mentally. Her obsession with family family might have to do with her nature as a BOW, but she's a lone child raised in test facilities with no family of her own, which might also explain her need for a family. The weakest character out of all of them is Marguerite, though that isn't saying much. She still has strong characterization, portraying an Annie Wilkes type of character who thinks she's doing right and being hospitable, but only in her long gone mind. Just like with Jack, her best aspects as a person have been darkly transformed. Going back to really great scenes in the game, one of my personal favorite moments in the game is when Ethan first meets the entire family. Not only is the entire sequence very much a tribute to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it also perfectly displays each character. Zoe, the first introduced as she is the one stapling Ethan's hand back together, is not seen, only heard, keeping in line with her isolated nature in the Baker family. What she says to Ethan is also telling, as it shows that she isn't wanting to bring harm to Ethan and in fact wants to escape. The Bakers don't catch this during the dinner sequence, and Lucas is the only one to find out later that Zoe's attempting to leave. I'm not going to include Jack, as by the time he figures out Zoe's looking for an escape, he's a blob monster and is more enthralled with Ethan. Jack, as usual, is portrayed as the one who gets the dirty work done, seeing as he's the current patriarch of Evie's family. He wants Ethan to accept the gift, but will break Ethan down if he has to. Marguerite is shown to be the caregiver, but just like with Annie Wilkes, becomes easily frustrated when her perceived care is not accepted. The only family member that is still shrouded in mystery is Lucas, though his facial expressions he makes when Jack starts attacking Ethan with a knife are telling, as Lucas gets sadistic glee when Ethan is tortured. Most of the story beats are solid, whether it be the escape from the main house, finding the cure, or dealing with Lucas, all of them are done well. Another thing that I love about the story is the use of environmental storytelling. Going back to the opening sequence in the main house, when Ethan goes to the bowl lock, he can look at framed photographs of the Bakers. Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas are all together on the same table, while Zoe's photo is not only on its own table, it's facing down and Zoe's face has been crossed out. You get tiny details like that through the story that help paint the picture alongside the told story. Once you get to the boat, the story pace slows way down to explain Mia's entire connection to Evie. It is to build her up as the main thread of the story, but I wish we got little snippets of what happened on the boat via the videotapes instead of just one long boat section that spells out everything. The Bakers do take up much of the screen time, leaving Evie with barely any, and the boat feels like a rectification of that, but it's at the expense of the overall speed of the story. It doesn't help that the boat is right after the final fight with Jack, as that fight is the climax to the first half of the story, making the boat feel like it just gets dropped onto the player like, oh, there's more? Don't worry, this won't be the last time I talk about that damn boat, as it's slow in a gameplay sense too. Evie's reveal, on the other hand, is just outright given to the player within the first 20 minutes from a photograph. It doesn't take a lot of mental gymnastics to figure out that the old woman is Evie, though the game does like to throw journal entries at the player to smokescreen the old woman. I think it would have worked better if you only saw Evie in her young form during Ethan's adventure through the estate, as that could call into question the photograph until the ending of the game, where you have that fantastic sequence of reliving the events of the guest house but seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. I don't think it hurts the story overall, I just wish it was properly built up. The story itself isn't outright scary, but lies in more with disturbing, as a lot of the imagery shown is freaky. There are moments that are scary, such as the approach to Evelyn's room in the old house, which has my favorite build-up in the game, but I still wouldn't say that the game is overtly scary. Granted, this is coming from me, someone who loves the horror genre, so what I find scary is different from someone else. Grotesquely gorgeous is the phrase I'd come up with when describing the visuals for the game. With the photorealism that the RE engine brings, each location that the player travels through is beautifully modeled. The Baker estate looks and feels like a rundown dump, so much so that it's like you can smell what the environment stinks like. From the trash-filled main house to the waterlogged and infested old house to the freshly painted barn, each location is memorable outside of the salt mine, which is the only boring location in the game. Still, it has Lucas's lab with the different photographs showing off mold testing, and there's the science lab proper, which is an extended version of that. And because the game is in the first person, you are up close and personal with everything in the game. The visual design is complemented by the excellent sound design and direction. There is music within the game, but it only plays to highlight events. Music is instead replaced with diegetic sound. You'll hear the creaks of the house as it settles, or the sounds of who knows what as you are exploring. It adds to the tension of exploring a hoarder's paradise. This plays extremely well with the found footage aesthetic, where it feels like you're in a horror movie or a documentary about a famous killer.
What? You don't believe me? This short? Well, you can't fake this. It has taken me weeks to finish this, and it is finally ready. And it's all for you. Oh, come on now. Don't be like that. It's gonna be fun. Just you wait.
Monster sounds are alright. They have a strange squelchy noise to them, and I love the sound that is made when you explode their heads. Weapons sound good across the board, and all the weapon models, sans the flamethrower and grenade launcher, are based on real weapons. Just like how they sound, each is fantastically modeled with care and detail, and I particularly like both the flamers and grenade launchers' design, as both are homebrew chic. The human models are great looking, as the detail that the RE engine is able to give brings the characters to life. Each of the family members outside of Zoe are coated in what appears to be grease, a visual detail that gets across how far they've fallen away from their humanity, and there are character-specific details to the models, like Lucas's eyes being more sunk in. The non-family members look like actual people, which, surprise, they are, and they are modeled just as well as the family members. The only one who looks slightly off is Chris, but I put that more towards the shift in art direction that the RE engine brings. The only character models I don't care for are the molded, and that's because they're boring blob monsters. In a series filled with iconic monster designs, these don't come anywhere near the ballpark, though the family's monster designs are much better, especially Marguerite's, which still freaks me out.
Gotcha!
Basically, everyone on the voice cast does a fantastic job, but my favorites are Jesse Pimentel as Lucas and Gage Maverick as Joe. Jesse sounds like he's having fun voicing an unrepentant sociopath, and Gage brings a gruff but caring aura to the character of Joe.
Well, I don't understand. You see that girl back there? Look! That there my brother's little girl. My niece, you understand? And around here, family is a righteous cause. And you ain't gonna kill my family! Now see, that ain't something I can abide.
It also helps that each have some of the best lines in the game.
That's how you get it done! Woo! Yeah. You remember me, right? You remember the time I broke your nose when we were kids? You remember when I clotheslined you into the swamp?
Resident Evil 7 is a first-person survival horror with exploration and stealth mixed in. Ethan is capable of doing what most standard RE protagonists are able to do movement and action-wise, but he has a few extra moves in his arsenal. Ethan can crouch, which can allow him to dodge certain attacks, enter small passageways, and grab items that are just out of reach. He can also block. Blocking is a new mechanic introduced to the RE series and allows a player to mitigate damage from enemy attacks. This doesn't fully negate damage, but it does minimize a great deal of it. When hit while blocking, Ethan will reel back and examine his hands, but this animation can be cancelled out of by holding down the block button after blocking successfully. This is called block cancelling. Block cancelling can be used to end animations before they naturally end. This helps when blocking multiple attacks in a string or cancelling a heal that has been completed. Blocking serves as one of the core mechanics of the game, though certain attacks can hit through blocks, such as grabs and instant kills. Another core mechanic is crafting. Littered around the Baker estate are items such as ammo, health drinks, antique coins, the currency of the game, files and videotapes, which shed light onto the events happening within 7, weapons, puzzle items, lockpicks, which can open some of the many locked item drawers and boxes, psychostimulants, which can be used to find items, maps, and crafting items. Crafting items must be combined in the inventory menu to create usable items. The inventory and crafting menu are all in real time, so it is not wise to use items from the menu or craft them when enemies are near. Crafting takes two components and forms them into one item, with higher quality items being created depending on what was fused together. The two most important items when it comes to this system is chem fluid and strong chem fluid. Both are necessary to perform any crafting, with chem fluid making the basic items like handgun ammo, health drinks, flamer fuel, and psychostimulants, and strong chem fluid creating enhanced handgun bullets and health drinks, and flame and neuro rounds for the grenade launcher. There is an item called separating agent that allows the player to acquire chem fluid from any one of the craftable items, but it is rare and it removes the complete item from the inventory. As Ethan explores the estate, he will find backpacks that increase his carrying capacity, as well as Mr. Everywhere bobbleheads, which are the ever collectible in the game. Stealth is another core mechanic of the game. Enemies aren't immediately alerted to Ethan's presence when he is near them. They have to physically see or hear Ethan to start attacking him. That means battles can be picked or not. This doesn't apply to every encounter though, as some enemies will spawn in knowing exactly where the player is. Stealth is also dependent on which game mode the player is picked, as in some it's optional while in others it's mandatory. Another way to avoid fights is by closing doors. This is the last of the core mechanics in the game. Ethan can run into doors to open them, but there is a dedicated door button that can open and close doors. The reasoning for closing doors is to make it harder for the Baker family to give chase, as well as trap Molded in rooms. During certain sections of the gameplay, there will be a Baker family member searching for Ethan so they can kill him. When in a chase, it is best to close doors after going through them, as it makes it harder for the family member to continue pursuing. Basic enemies, on the other hand, can't open doors, meaning if a room will never be visited again at a later time, it is better to trap an enemy than kill them. The most encountered enemy in the game are the Molded, which come in a few varieties such as basic, bladed, crawlers, and fatties. There is also a variation called the white molded, but those only show up in extra modes and are more an obstacle than enemy. Same with the Gators that show up in Joe's campaign. There are insect enemies such as large wasps, but they go down in one hit from everything besides the flamer and insect clouds, which are like the white molded and Gators and require to be hosed down with the flamer and their nests destroyed. To combat the player being able to aim in the first person, Molded can shuffle around to make themselves harder to hit, and some can even protect their head with a free limb. A Molded will generally attack with any arm that they have, though some have attacks separate from this, such as the Fatty's Bile Spray or the Crawler's Leaping Strike. Molded can lose body parts if damaged enough, though this won't kill them nor will it stop them from attacking, as Basic, Bladed, and Fatty Molded can still grapple, forcing a pseudo QTE. They do die if they take enough damage or their head has been blown off, however, and each molded type has varying vitality stats dictating how many headshots are needed for a kill, as, trust me, body shots aren't worth it. Aiming is made purposefully awkward to account for the perspective, as well as the character reason that Ethan doesn't have firearms training. Player can fire either from the hip or focus before firing. When focusing, the crosshair will turn into a more accurate version of itself, with the handguns turning into a tiny dot, the shotguns into a medium-sized circle, and so forth and so on. When a weapon is fired while focused, it will hit whatever it is pointed at, but the recoil of the gun will unfocus the crosshair, requiring the player to wait between shots. Certain weapons are exempt from this, like the flamer and shotgun, but most require a waiting period before being focused again. Even when hitting an enemy, a player must be careful. Headshots, which do the most damage against the molded, can cause specific types to quickly stagger forward, sometimes into attack range. This creates some depth in the combat, as do you wait for a molded to get close into attack range for easy headshots, or do you shoot from afar, hoping to avoid a close confrontation? Or do you run past the molded like the non-threats that they are? Healing is done with a press of a button as long as a player has a health drink. This keeps the action flowing and adds a bit of risk to healing while mid-combat. Just like in other RE games, there are designated safe rooms that allow the player to manage items with the item box as well as save the game. Most of the other game modes have safe rooms, though some do not. When a player dies, they either reload an autosave, which acts kinda like a checkpoint, or they quit out and load a previous save, which even includes the autosave. There is variety when it comes to the other game modes. Chris and Joe's campaigns play much like Ethan's, though the two have separate variations of Ethan's mechanics. Zoe, and by extension Bedroom, single out a core mechanic, in the case for both stealth, and prioritize puzzle solving. 21 out of all the modes is the most mechanically different, as the player is tasked with winning games of blackjack through luck and card effects. There are rewards for completing game modes and fulfilling certain objectives within a mode. At certain points in the story, Ethan or one of the many other characters must face a boss. Bosses in 7 do require a bit of strategy to beat. Some might require Ethan to make use of an item in the environment, such as Jack 1 being easily defeated by the car and Jack 2 being stumbled by the hanging bodies, while others might need the player to hit specific parts on a boss, as Jack 3 only goes down when his eyes are destroyed. One even requires the use of the blocking mechanic to win. I don't know why I haven't spoken about them beforehand, but the controls are extremely responsive and everything you do is purposeful and usually ties back into one of the mechanics of the game. The only bad thing I can say is that performing Joe's punch combos can be a bit finicky and require you to mash out the sequence for an ender instead of timing it. I love exploring the Baker estate. Even though I've already said it, it feels very much like the mansion from RE1, but while that was a pristine Gothic-inspired abode, the Baker's home is a run-down, trash-filled sty. Each section of the house has its own style pertaining to who has control in the section. I also like how the state of the house pertains to item locations. It would make sense that a box of shotgun shells would be randomly placed in an offbeat part of the house since the Bakers and Evelyn have trashed it. There is a reason why psychostimulants exist, as items can show up almost anywhere. There is backtracking in the game, but combined with new areas of the house being opened up, new enemies appearing, and finding items that may have been overlooked makes the return to the main house one of the best sections in the game. Some parts of the environment even change as the upper hall becomes plastered with mold, showing that time has passed. Another thing I really enjoy are the set pieces. Ethan losing his hand is both terrifying and darkly comedic in every way, and just being able to pick it up and put it into the inventory solidifies this. That section has Ethan reload slower too, which is another nice detail. Though my favorite one of these sequences is the first chase with Jack. After tumbling out of his chair, Ethan must steal a key to enter a hatch while Jack looks for him. Most of the events that can happen are entirely optional. If you get the key and sneakily enter the hatch, Jack will just give up his search in that section of the house and leave, though the hatch will automatically lock itself. If you get seen, you can still get the key and lose Jack, allowing a sneaky entrance to the hatch. While in a chase, Jack can perform a few actions. He can smash through the dining room table if chased into that room, he can crash through the wall of the hatch room to continue his pursuit, and most well known of all, he can cut Ethan's foot off if he tries to enter the hatch while Jack is in the room.
You came to the wrong house, boy! Poor thing. You can do it. You better now?
What the fuck?
He's steady.
All the other chases aren't as great as this one due to the lack of variability, but they still add a good bit of tension to exploration. Jack is also the king of bosses in this game, as outside of the final time Ethan fights him, all of his fights are fun. The first two Jack fights have unique ways to deal with him, such as the car in the first fight, which can be used to immediately end the encounter, or the second fight's chainsaw duel. The other two fights with Jack are with Joe and his amazing gameplay style of punching problems until they stop moving. These fights are where guard canceling shines, as Joe can block Jack's combos and then retaliate with his own. It becomes a battle about spacing and timing, learning when to block and when to avoid, as Jack does have a grab. Joe can even take advantage of items he's crafted, like spears or bombs, finishers that do a lot of damage, or the multi-tool. Marguerite is a close second to Jack, as I do love her cat and mouse chase in the greenhouse. I just wish she wasn't as sturdy. While I didn't cover the other game modes in the gameplay section, most of the game modes bring something different to the table and add replayability to the game. Not all are my cup of variety, as Daughters in Bedroom are stealth-based, which isn't a type of genre I go out of my way to play, but it does add something new to do. Though the two best DLCs are Not a Hero and End of Zoe due to the overall changes to the gameplay both bring. Because Chris has been in the BOW hunting business for a long time, not only is he hardier than Ethan, allowing him to take more damage from attacks, he's also unafraid to get physical with the molded, using his damaging straight from RE5, which is fully capable of decapitating a molded. Chris is also trained, meaning he aims down weapon sights, allowing for better aim compared to Ethan's, which I think is a cool character detail. Chris has faced off with monsters since the late 90s, thus the molded aren't much of a threat to him outside of the white molded, while Ethan is a regular guy with no weapons training. While not much happens in his DLC story-wise, as it's all about bagging Lucas, I do like the trip bomb sequence that punishes the player for rushing to the rescue. What else would have happened? Joe's campaign instead is all about practicing for the next Punch-Out game to come out. The combat in End of Zoe is visceral and up close, and every punch thrown and attack blocked feels weighty. There's also Jack's 55th birthday, which is a wacky romp to feed Jack that is both fun and funny as molded start wearing party hats and Jack's demands for food are entertaining. Lastly, there is Ethan Must Die, a Dark Souls type game mode where enemies hit hard, dying creates a loot pile that must be reached to recover items, and dying happens a lot. Ultra punishing, but in the fun sort of way. My absolute favorite section within the game is the Happy Birthday puzzle. If you already know the answer to it, you don't have to watch the videotape, but is by far the best tape in the main game. Watching Clancy play through Lucas's sadistic game, ending with Clancy roasting, not only builds up Lucas as this genuine monster, but the tape itself is the most terrifying and, dare I say, scariest part of the game. You are forced to play through Clancy burning to death, entirely helpless as he screams his head off, experiencing immense pain and suffering before dying. I think the last thing I will talk about in this section is the crafting system. It makes you contemplate on what you need and what you want in the current situation. Depending on how a player might play, they might need handgun ammo over healing fluid or vice versa, but they may want grenade ammo, leading to this dichotomy of choice. I love this idea at its core, though its execution is a bit sloppy. The boat is the worst part of the game. Story-wise, it kills the pacing with a huge plot dump. Gameplay-wise, you lose all your weapons up to that point and have to scrounge around while dealing with some of the hardest enemies in the game. That means a lot of sneaking around or avoiding fights with crawlers, as without a good weapon, they will rip you apart. It would be fine if this section wasn't before the climax of the game, as the early parts of Resident Evil 7 prioritize skulking around, but immediately after the boat is the mine, which is an enemy gauntlet you are expected to fight through. I understand wanting to slow the game down after the final fight against Jack, but slowing it down to the point of going negative speed is just not fun. The thing is, the boat wants the cake and to eat it too, as the last videotape is more or less the approach to the Boathouse, as the game wants you to fight enemies during the tape. To me, the boat wants to be a horror sequence before ultimately giving up the ghost and handing you weapons and forcing fights. Either do one or the other, because the boat isn't long enough to do a ramp up. It took from Main House 1 to the Boathouse for 7 to dip into horror action, with that whole entire part of the game being around 4 hours, yet the boat thinks it can do that in less time with no build up. The boat gives me Revelations 1 flashbacks just in reverse, as the point in time that the boat happens, 7 has crossed the line into horror action and then violently snaps back to survival horror, as opposed to Revelations being survival horror that changes to action during its flashbacks. Outside of the crawlers, fatties, and gators, enemies are also a pushover, which is something that genuinely annoys me. I've already explained that the point of avoiding enemies in Resident Evil is to conserve ammo for either tougher enemies or bosses, which require you to fight. Enemies still act as obstacles, as getting around them without taking damage or using ammo still requires thought. Not so much with the regular molded, however. Their movement speed is slow, and their attacks can either be easily avoided or blocked, which negates a good portion of damage. I'm avoiding them not because I don't want to lose ammo or health for something that might require it, but because they are too stupid to be a legitimate threat. They can't open doors, meaning one and done rooms can easily be run through without ever dealing with a molded. The first encounter with a bladed molded is the funniest introduction ever due to the buildup that he has by slithering out, being all menacing and the like, but the item he is holding can be picked up and the door closed in front of him before he can do anything. There's no sense of tension or dread when dealing with regular molded, unlike other enemies in the series. Well, unless you talk about the crawlers. They are the worst enemy in the game, and that lies with how they hit around the guard mechanic. While they don't take a lot of damage, as one well-placed shotgun blast can put them down, letting them live is the stupidest mistake you can make. They do considerable damage on par, or maybe even more so, with the fat molded, and it's because of their leap attack. Their leap is a two-part attack that is hard to block. Taking both hits will most definitely kill or put you into danger, and even one hit is strong enough to put you into orange caution. Blocking only negates the first hit, as the second one comes out too fast for a block cancel. The crawler can also attack immediately after a leap and can attack in quick succession, so the only safe way to fight a crawler is to kill it before it attacks. Combine this with other molded or the aforementioned boat, and it's a recipe for frustration. Like I said in the good section, I do like how the crafting system does force you to think about what you need and what you want. Is it better to craft ammo for a hard encounter or healing items to tank blows? My issue with it is that most of the better items that are craftable are just not worth it. Enhanced handgun ammo gets beaten out by the shotgun, which in turn is beaten out by the grenade launcher and magnum. Enhanced healing items do heal fully, but the amount of regular healing drinks that you can find and make justifies never using strong chem fluid to make enhanced healing drinks. What is a shame is that you can't craft magnum ammo, only find it. I wish instead of there being two types of grenades, the flame rounds were replaced with craftable magnum ammo. Fire, in general, is only effective against insect enemies, which only appear in one section of the game and are handily dealt with by the flamer. Nero rounds, while kinda underpowered as pinpoint accuracy is rewarded more in this game as opposed to hitting center of mass, are still better than flame rounds and both need strong chem fluid, meaning Nero rounds will always be prioritized over flame rounds. Making magnum ammo craftable would alleviate this situation, as the player could have a choice of either picking the riskier magnum ammo or the safer Nero rounds. Lastly, I don't care about the stealth, and this isn't because the game has bad stealth. At worst, the stealth in the game is basic line of sight and sound, and at its best is extremely tense. I just don't like stealth, and that's something that is on me, not the game. Resident Evil 7 is in my top 3 when it comes to Resident Evil games, slotted in between Remake 2, which is my favorite RE game, and Remake 1, which is my third favorite. It brings the series back to its survival horror roots while implementing new gameplay ideas that change how players deal with threats. I don't think all the changes are great, as basic enemies get lost in the shuffle, but everything else is executed pretty well. The best way to play is either the PC version, as mouse aim is much better in first person than a controller, or the VR version for total immersion.